At 37 years old, Cameron Davis considered his life a quiet success, built not on explosive luck, but on the steady, methodical accumulation of good decisions. His salary as a commercial real estate broker in Nashville was a comfortable $185,000 a year, a figure that felt both substantial and earned. He lived in an East Nashville bungalow he'd bought a decade ago for $220,000, long before the neighborhood became a sea of hip cafes and million-dollar renovations. Now its value hovered near $650,000, a number that represented his foresight more than his wealth. His life was his bungalow, his career, and his wife Jada. He believed, with the certainty of a man who checks his work twice, that his foundation was solid rock. That belief held firm until Tuesday morning, May 14th, at precisely 9:17 a.m. The week had started with the familiar, comforting rhythm of domestic partnership. On Sunday night, Jada had been curled on their plush $3,200 crate and barrel sectional, scrolling through her phone. The lamplight caught the intricate pattern of her box braids, each one a perfect, glossy rope. "Babe, Tasha and I are finally doing it," she'd announced, not looking up from her screen. "We're booking that spa weekend at the Omni, the one we've been talking about for months." Cameron, clearing their dinner plates, smiled. "That's great, honey. You deserve it." He meant it. Jada worked hard as a marketing manager for a boutique clothing brand, and he knew the pressure she was under, or at least he thought he did. "It's this coming weekend," she continued, her thumb moving quickly. "We're just going to unplug. No phones, no emails, just massages and mimosas. Tasha's making it a rule. Don't even try to call me." She'd laughed, a light, airy sound that filled their cozy living room. He remembered thinking how lovely it was, that sound. He associated it with happiness, with the life they had built within the walls of his premarital home. He'd put down the plates and kissed the top of her head, smelling the faint, sweet scent of the coconut oil she used on her scalp. On Monday, she'd been a whirlwind of preparation. She'd laid out 3 different resort wear outfits on their king-sized bed, each one more expensive than the last. A $450 Tory Burch cover-up, a $380 swimsuit he'd never seen before, a pair of $600 Jimmy Choo sandals. "Is this too much for a spa?" she'd asked, holding up a shimmering dress. "You'll be the best-dressed woman there," he'd said, and she'd beamed, the compliment landing exactly as he'd intended. He helped her pack, folding her clothes carefully, a small act of service that felt like love. His own life was one of sturdy, reliable things. His 10-year-old $89 Timex watch, his 2015 Honda Accord with 112,000 miles on the odometer, the simple, dark suits he wore to work. Jada was the one who brought the sparkle, the luxury. Her white BMW 3 Series, a $43,000 purchase they had celebrated, sat gleaming in the driveway next to his sensible sedan. He saw it not as a contrast, but as a balance. He was the foundation. She was the beautiful facade. He had no idea how horribly accurate that metaphor was. The entire exchange, the entire week, was a performance, and he was its sole, unsuspecting audience member. The curtain didn't just fall on Tuesday morning, it was ripped down, set on fire, and thrown at his feet. This is what makes a man question everything, not just his marriage, but his own judgment. How can you be a successful broker, a man whose entire career is built on assessing value and risk, on seeing what's really there versus what's being presented, and be so utterly blind at home? The question would haunt him for days, a low, constant hum beneath the roar of his collapsing world. What else did he not see? What other lies had he absorbed as truth? He was about to find out that the life he thought was worth $1 million, the bungalow, the career, the beautiful wife, was in fact built on an emotional debt so deep He'd never be able to calculate the interest. The betrayal wasn't just about a weekend, it was about the entire infrastructure of their shared existence. And as he sat in his sterile office, the Nashville skyline glittering outside his window, he felt the first tremor of the earthquake that was about to level it all. He thought about her parting words for the weekend. "Don't call me, babe. I'm unplugging." It was a lie, of course. All of it was a lie. And the proof was sitting in his inbox, a digital bomb waiting for him to click it open. But have you ever had a moment where your whole world shifts on its axis? A single piece of information that rewrites your entire past? Let me know in the comments if you've ever faced a truth that changed everything in an instant. The facade of their life was meticulously constructed, full of dollar tag details that in retrospect were not signs of shared success, but props in Jada's one-woman show. Cameron was a man of simple pleasures and long-term investments. He cooked. Not gourmet meals, but solid, comforting food. On a typical Wednesday evening, he'd be in the kitchen of the East Nashville bungalow, the air thick with the smell of sautéed garlic and onions. He'd make a big pot of turkey chili, a recipe from his mother, Mama Rose, that cost less than $20 in ingredients and could feed them for 3 days. Jada would walk in from work, drop her $2,800 Givenchy Antigona bag on the floor, a habit that made him wince, and sigh dramatically. God, what a day. "Is that your famous chili?" she'd ask, already reaching for a wine glass. She'd pour a generous glass of a $60 bottle of Sauvignon Blanc, while he was content with water. "The one and only," he'd say, stirring the pot with a wooden spoon that was older than their marriage. "How was your day?" Her answers were always vague but glamorous. "Meetings. So many meetings. We're trying to source a new Italian leather for the fall collection, and you would not believe the cost. We're talking a $15,000 initial order, minimum." She'd sip her wine, leaning against the $4,000 quartz countertop they'd had installed last year. Cameron had paid for 70% of the renovation, a $25,000 project from his savings. He'd seen it as an investment in their home, their future. He now wondered what she saw it as. Their weekends were a study in financial contrast. On a Saturday morning, Cameron might spend 3 hours in the garden, his hands deep in the rich Tennessee soil. He'd invested maybe $500 over the years in perennials, tomato plants, and good quality mulch. It was a hobby that gave back, providing them with fresh herbs and a peaceful place to sit. While he worked, Jada would often be at a brunch with friends like Tasha in the Gulch, where a single mimosa cost $14 and the valet parking was $10. She'd come home with stories of their conversation and a receipt for a $120 meal tucked into her wallet. "You should have come, Cam," she'd say, kissing his sweaty brow. "It was fabulous. Tasha just got a promotion. She's making almost 6 figures now." "Someone's got to tend the tomatoes," he'd reply with a smile, genuinely happy in his small patch of green. He didn't begrudge her the expensive brunches. He made good money. She should enjoy it. He saw his steady income as the platform from which she could leap into these little luxuries. It made him feel like a good provider, a good husband. He failed to see that he wasn't a partner in her life, but a sponsor. Their financial discussions were always brief and initiated by him. Once a month, he'd sit at their small dining table with his laptop. "Honey, can you look at this with me for a minute?" Jada would groan. "Ugh, spreadsheets. Cam, you know I hate this. You're the numbers guy. I trust you." "I know. But this is our money. I just want to make sure we're on the same page for our savings goals," he'd insist gently. He'd point to the screen, showing their joint savings account, which held a respectable $78,400. "We're on track to have a down payment for a bigger place in a few years if that's what we still want." "Honestly, babe, I love this house," she'd say, draping her arms around his neck from behind. It's so you, so solid. She'd kiss his cheek. You handle the money, I'll handle making our life look good. She meant it as a joke, a division of labor. He would later realize it was the most honest thing she'd ever said to him. She wasn't building a life with him, she was decorating the one he provided. The signs were everywhere, hiding in plain sight. The way she talked about his brokerage. He was a partner in a small, highly successful firm that specialized in commercial properties in the booming Nashville market. His equity stake was valued at a conservative $410,000. When he'd first made partner, he'd been ecstatic. He'd taken Jada out to Cane Prime, a steakhouse where the bill easily topped $500, to celebrate. This is it, Jada, he'd said, his voice thick with emotion. This is generational. This is something I can build and pass down. His own father had been a mechanic, a man with calloused hands and a steady heart who had owned his own small garage. The idea of ownership was sacred to Cameron. Jada had smiled, raising her glass. To my partner, she'd said, but later that night she'd asked, so does this mean I can get the new Burberry trench coat? The one for $2,400? He'd laughed and said yes, of course. He didn't notice that she hadn't asked about the business, about his partners, about the deals he was making. She'd only asked what his success could buy for her. It was a transaction. Everything was a transaction. He was the earner, and she was the beneficiary. He just hadn't been reading the fine print. And the fine print was about to come due, with penalties he could never have imagined. The email landed in his inbox with digital silence, but it detonated in his mind like a bomb. It was 9:17 a.m. Cameron was in his glass-walled office on the 12th floor of a building on Music Row. Below him, the city was humming with its usual Tuesday energy. He was deep in the financials of a $12 million acquisition of a warehouse in the Wedgwood, Houston neighborhood, a deal he had been cultivating for 6 months. He was focused, in his element. He'd opened his personal Gmail account in a separate tab, intending to find and print a receipt for a software subscription. That's when he saw it. An email from Jada. The subject line was bizarre. Forward, LOL, check this. His first thought was that it was spam, or that her account had been hacked, but the preview text made his blood run cold. He totally bought it. Memphis, here we come. Can't wait to see you. His fingers, which had been confidently tapping on a calculator moments before, went numb. He clicked open the email. His screen was filled with a messy chain of forwarded messages. It was like an archaeological dig into his own ruin. At the very top was Jada's brief message to him, the one she had clearly sent by mistake. She must have typed his name instead of someone else's in the to field. A simple, fatal error. Below her message was the email she had intended to forward. It was from her friend Tasha, sent the previous evening. The subject was FWD, LOL, check this. Tasha's message was brief. Girl, you are a master. Have the best time with Andre. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Andre. The name didn't register at first. It was just a piece of data that didn't fit. Cameron's eyes scanned further down, to the original email in the chain. This was the one Tasha had been forwarding. It was from Jada, sent to Tasha an hour before that. The subject was LOL, check this. Jada's text read, I needed to show him proof, in case he got suspicious, so I booked a facial and then canceled it immediately. Look at the official-looking cancellation email. He totally bought the spa weekend story. Memphis, here we come. Can't wait to see you. And there, at the very bottom of the chain, was the artifact that broke everything. It was an automated email from the Omni Nashville Hotel. Subject, your spa reservation cancellation date, May 1st, 2:43 p.m. Dear Jada Davis, this email confirms the cancellation of your rejuvenation package facial. previously scheduled for Saturday, May 18th. As per our policy, your deposit of $50 has been refunded to your card on file. We are sorry to see you go and hope you will consider us for your future relaxation needs. The date on the cancellation was May 1st, 2 weeks ago. She had been planning this for at least 2 weeks. She had booked a single facial and canceled it just to generate a piece of proof she never even had to use. The sheer, cold-blooded premeditation of it was what stole his breath. This wasn't a spontaneous mistake. This was a calculated deception, a conspiracy against his trust. He felt a strange, chilling calm descend. The humming of the air conditioning unit seemed deafening. The numbers on the spreadsheet in his other tab blurred into meaningless squiggles. The $12 million deal felt like a game for children. He leaned back in his $900 Herman Miller office chair, a chair he'd been so proud to earn, and stared out the window at the Nashville skyline. The Batman building, the glass towers of the Gulch, they all seemed like a painted backdrop to a play he hadn't known he was in. Andre, he typed the name into the search bar of their shared photo cloud. Nothing? He typed it into the search bar of his own email, his own texts. Nothing. He wasn't in their immediate circle. Then he remembered something. A few months back, Jada had gone to a marketing conference in Memphis. She'd come back buzzing with energy. "I met the most amazing keynote speaker," she'd said. "A guy named Andre Collins. He's a brand guru, so inspiring." Cameron scrolled back through her social media. There it was, a photo from the conference, posted 3 months ago. Jada, looking radiant in a $700 Diane von Furstenberg wrap dress, was standing next to a tall, handsome black man with a dazzlingly white smile and a tailored suit that probably cost $3,000. The caption read, "Soaking up all the wisdom from the brilliant Andre Collins. A true inspiration." His stomach twisted. He clicked on Andre's tagged profile. It was public. His bio read, "Brand strategist, keynote speaker, philanthropist, living in Atlanta and Memphis." His feed was a curated collection of luxury, first-class flights, 5-star hotels, expensive watches, and photos of him speaking to adoring crowds. Cameron felt a wave of nausea. He closed the laptop. He stood up and walked to the window. The city looked fragile, breakable. He looked at his own reflection in the glass. He was a tall man, with deep brown skin that his mother always said was a gift. His locks were neat, tied back from his face. He looked solid, dependable. He looked like a fool. He did not get angry. Not yet. The emotion was too hot, too chaotic. What he felt was a profound and terrifying stillness, the kind of stillness that comes after a lightning strike, in the silent moment before the thunder cracks. He knew, with absolute certainty, that his marriage was over. The only question left was how he would orchestrate its end. He had been played. But Cameron Davis was a man who understood strategy. The game had changed, and he was about to write a new set of rules. The hours after the discovery were a blur of cold, quiet action. The rage was there, a white-hot coal buried deep in his chest. But on the surface, he was ice. He sent a brief email to his business partner. "Something's come up. Need to take the rest of the day. Handle the call with the zoning commission for me." He didn't wait for a reply. He grabbed his worn leather briefcase, a $350 gift from Jada for their first anniversary, and walked out of the office, nodding curtly to his assistant. He felt like a stranger in his own life, an actor playing the part of Cameron Davis. He drove his Honda not home, but to Centennial Park. He needed space, air, a place that wasn't contaminated by her presence. He sat on a bench facing the Parthenon, the grand, solid replica, a bizarre comfort. He took out his phone. His hands were perfectly steady. This was the beginning of Playing Dumb, a 5-day performance that would require an Oscar-worthy level of self-control. He needed more than suspicion. He needed irrefutable proof. The email was a smoking gun, but he wanted the entire arsenal. He logged into their joint Verizon account online. He had set it up years ago. The password was, ironically, Cameron Jada Forever. He felt a bitter laugh escape his lips. He changed the password immediately to something random and complex. Then he pulled up the detailed call and text logs for Jada's line. It was all there, a roadmap of his humiliation. For the past 3 months, ever since that conference in Memphis, there was one number that appeared constantly, an Atlanta area code. Dozens of calls, hundreds of texts. Some of the calls were late at night after he was asleep. Some were in the middle of the workday. There was a call that lasted 94 minutes on a day she'd told him she was stuck in a miserable all-day meeting. He then logged into their shared Amazon account. He looked at the order history. Tucked between his orders for protein powder and air filters were her purchases. A set of expensive lingerie, delivered not to their house, but to an Amazon locker in Franklin. The order was placed 2 weeks ago. Another purchase, a men's cologne, a high-end brand called Creed Aventus, costing $470 a bottle. It wasn't a scent he wore. It was delivered to the same Amazon locker. The cruelty was in the details. She was using his money, their shared accounts, to facilitate her affair. He felt a fresh wave of sickness. He was not just a husband being cheated on. He was a bank being robbed. He drove home to the bungalow. The house felt alien. Every object was a lie. The framed photo on the mantelpiece from their wedding 3 years ago, her in a stunning $8,000 gown, him in a rented tux, both of them smiling. It looked like a picture of 2 strangers. He walked into their bedroom. Her scent was on the pillows. He saw the space on her side of the closet where the resort wear had been laid out. His phone buzzed. It was a text from her. Jada. Hey, babe. Just landed in Nashville from my trip. So tired, but it was amazing. Can't wait for my spa weekend to recharge. Miss you. XOXO. She was lying about being on a work trip. There was no work trip. He checked her location through the Find My app, a feature they used for convenience. Her phone was pinging from a location in Germantown, a trendy neighborhood in Nashville. She was probably having lunch with Tasha, conspiring. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. The urge to unleash, to confront her with a single screenshot of the email was immense. It would be satisfying. Explosive. It would also be stupid. A messy, emotional confrontation would give her power. It would allow her to cry, to apologize, to manipulate. He would not give her that. He would give her silence. He would give her consequences. He typed back a simple, devastatingly normal reply. Cameron, glad you're back safe. Have a great time this weekend. Relax and enjoy. Talk to you Sunday? He put the phone down, his heart hammering against his ribs. The lie felt like poison on his tongue. He was now part of the deception, a co-conspirator in his own betrayal. This was the hardest part of the plan. To live inside the lie with her for 5 more days, to smile when she called, to wish her well, to act the part of the loving, clueless husband while he systematically dismantled their life. That night, he slept in the guest room. He couldn't bear to be in their bed. He lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, the silence of the house pressing in on him. He thought about every girls' night, every late work dinner, every business trip. How many were lies? He scrolled through her Instagram again, this time with the eyes of a forensic investigator. A post from a month ago. Jada and Tasha, clinking champagne glasses at a rooftop bar. Girls' night is the best night. He checked the date. It was a Tuesday. He had been in Atlanta for a 1-day meeting. He checked her call logs for that day. A 45-minute call to the Andre number in the late afternoon. Another one at 11:30 p.m. The outrage was building, layer by layer. It wasn't a hot, flashing anger anymore. It was becoming something colder, denser. It was becoming fuel. On Wednesday, he called her as he drove to work, just as he always did. "Morning, beautiful," he said, his voice a perfect imitation of his usual warmth. "Hey, you," she answered, her voice bright and cheerful. "I'm just running around getting some last-minute things for my trip, a new face mask, some travel-size stuff. You know." He knew she was lying. He could almost hear the falseness in her tone, a frequency he was now perfectly tuned to. "Of course," he said. "Don't forget to pack that book you wanted to read." "Oh, I won't. I can't wait to just lie by the pool and do nothing," she chirped. "Okay, babe. I gotta run. Tasha's calling me. Love you." "Love you too," he said, and hung up. The words tasted like ash. He had to clench the steering wheel to keep his hands from shaking. Each lie she told was another brick in the wall he was building between them, and she had no idea she was handing him the materials, one by one. On Wednesday morning at 10 a.m., Cameron was not in his office. He was sitting in a discreet, tastefully appointed conference room in the Green Hills neighborhood of Nashville, a world away from the trendy chaos of downtown. The air smelled of old leather and fresh coffee. Across a polished mahogany table sat Marcus Thorne, Esquire. Marcus was a legend in Nashville's legal community. A sharp, impeccably dressed black man in his late 50s, he had a reputation for being both a merciless litigator and a wise counselor. He specialized in high-asset divorces, and his services were not cheap. His hourly rate was $950, a fact he stated without apology. Cameron had gotten his name from a senior partner at his firm who had simply said, "If you want it done right, and you want it done quietly, you call Marcus." Cameron had dressed with intention. A simple, dark gray suit, a crisp white shirt, no tie. He wanted to project calm competence, not emotional distress. He had his laptop and a thin file folder on the table in front of him. Marcus observed him for a long moment, his eyes discerning. "Mr. Davis," he began, his voice a smooth baritone. "Your colleague, Mr. Albright, spoke very highly of you. He said you were a man who understands the importance of a solid foundation. Tell me what's happened to yours." Cameron took a steadying breath. "My wife is having an affair," he said, the words stark and ugly in the quiet room. "I have proof. I want to file for divorce. I want to protect my assets, and I want it to be clean, decisive." Marcus nodded slowly, his face unreadable. "Show me." For the next 30 minutes, Cameron laid out his case with the precision of a real estate broker presenting a deal. He didn't rail or cry. He presented facts. He opened his laptop and showed Marcus the email chain. He pointed to the cancellation date, the faked proof, the name Andre. He showed him the Verizon call logs, highlighting the Atlanta number and the frequency of the calls. He showed him the Amazon order history for the lingerie and the expensive cologne, delivered to an anonymous locker. Marcus read everything in silence, his expression unchanging. When Cameron was finished, the lawyer leaned back in his chair. "The premeditation is damning," he said, his voice low. "The creation of false evidence, the canceled spa booking, that's what a judge will notice. It speaks to character." "That's what I thought," Cameron said, his voice tight. "Now," Marcus continued, shifting gears, "let's talk about assets. You mentioned the house was premarital." "Yes," Cameron said. "I bought the bungalow on North 11th Street in 2014 for $220,500. Jada and I were married in 2021. The deed is solely in my name." "Have you made improvements to the property during the marriage?" "Yes. A kitchen renovation last year, it cost $25,000. I paid for $17,500 of it from my personal savings, predating the marriage. The other $7,500 came from our joint account. Marcus made a note on a yellow legal pad. She will have a claim to a portion of the appreciated value based on that joint contribution. But it will be small. We can likely buy her out of it for a modest sum. What's the current estimated value? My firm's analyst put it at $650,000 2 months ago, Cameron said. Marcus's eyebrows lifted slightly. Good. What else? Your business. I have a 25% equity stake in my brokerage, Davis and Albright Commercial. My last valuation statement from 6 months ago put my share at $410,000. When did you become a partner? 2 years ago, during the marriage. Okay, Marcus said. That equity is a marital asset. She'll be entitled to half of it. Cameron's heart sank. That was over $200,000. It was the culmination of his life's work. Marcus saw the look on his face. However, he said, leaning forward, Tennessee is an equitable distribution state, not a community property state. That means the court divides assets fairly, not necessarily 50-50, and adultery can be a factor in that division, especially when marital funds were used to facilitate the affair. He tapped the printout of the Amazon orders. This $470 cologne and this lingerie. This is dissipation of marital assets. It's small, but it establishes a pattern. Her weekend trip to Memphis, paid for with marital funds under false pretenses, is another example. We will argue that her conduct should weigh against her in the distribution of assets like your brokerage equity. A sliver of hope cut through Cameron's grim resolve. What's in your joint accounts? Marcus asked. A checking account with about $12,000. A savings account with $78,400. And her car? A 2022 BMW 3 Series. We have a loan on it. We put $10,000 down from the joint account. The monthly payment of $750 also comes from the joint account. Good, Marcus said, a faint predatory smile touching his lips. We have a clear path. Here is what we are going to do. The plan was cold, strategic, and brutal. Cameron would continue to play the part of the ignorant husband until Sunday. On Friday, after Jada left for her trip, Marcus would draft and file a temporary restraining order, freezing all marital assets. That meant the joint accounts would be locked. Her credit cards, on which she was an authorized user, but he was the primary account holder, would be deactivated. The goal, Marcus explained, is to seize the initiative. When she returns on Sunday, she will not be returning to her home. She will be returning to a legal reality she is completely unprepared for. She will have no access to funds, no place to stay other than with a friend, and a formal legal notice waiting for her. This prevents her from clearing out the accounts or running up debt. They planned the final scene with the precision of a film director. Cameron would arrange for a realtor to be present. Not because you are selling the house, Marcus clarified, but as a psychological blow. It communicates that her time in that life is over. It turns her home into a piece of real estate. Cameron listened, a cold knot forming in his stomach. This was so far beyond his nature. He was a builder, not a demolisher. But Jada had left him no choice. She had torn down the structure of their life. He was just clearing the rubble. I can do this, Cameron said, his voice steadier than he felt. I know you can, Marcus replied. Go home. Gather every financial statement you can find. Deeds, tax returns, brokerage statements, car titles, credit card bills. Scan them. Send them to my office via secure server. The more documentation we have, the stronger our position. And Mr. Davis, he added, his gaze intense, do not speak to her about this. Do not answer any frantic calls on Sunday. Let her speak to me. You are the client. I am the instrument. Cameron walked out of the law office into the bright Tennessee sunshine. He felt hollowed out, but also strangely powerful. He had a plan. He had an advantage. The game was afoot, and he was finally in control. The days between Wednesday's meeting with Marcus and Jada's departure on Friday were the longest of Cameron's life. He moved through his hours like a phantom, his body performing the familiar rituals of his life, while his mind operated on a separate, strategic plane. He was living a double life, just as she had been. The irony was not lost on him. On Thursday evening, Jada was in high spirits, packing a small, stylish weekender bag, a $750 Toomey piece he'd bought her for her birthday. The house was filled with her laughter and the scent of the expensive perfume she wore. To Cameron, it all felt like a grotesque pantomime. "I cannot wait to just do nothing," she said, folding a silk robe. "Tasha and I are going to order room service, get 90-minute deep tissue massages, and not talk to a single man for 48 hours. She winked at him. "Present company excluded, of course." Cameron forced a smile. "Sounds like heaven." Each word was a betrayal of the rage simmering beneath his calm exterior. He felt a muscle in his jaw twitch. He was gathering evidence, playing a role. But the emotional cost was accumulating with every lie he had to absorb. This was where the outrage was truly compounding, in the quiet moments of domestic deceit. He watched her pack. He saw the new lingerie, the set he'd seen on the Amazon order, tucked discreetly into a side pocket of the bag. She was taking it with her to Memphis, to Andre. She was taking a piece of her betrayal, purchased with their shared money, on a trip funded by their shared life, to sleep with another man. It was so brazen, so utterly devoid of respect, that it momentarily took his breath away. "What's wrong, babe?" she asked, catching his expression. "You look a million miles away." He blinked, schooling his features back into a mask of placid affection. "Just thinking about a deal at work," he lied smoothly. "It's complicated." "Well, forget about work," she said, coming over to wrap her arms around his waist. She laid her head on his chest. He could feel the warmth of her body, smell her hair. It was the same body he had held hundreds of times, the same scent he associated with love and home. Now it felt like a violation. He stood perfectly still, a statue of a husband, and did not wrap his arms around her. She didn't seem to notice. She pulled back, smiling. "You'll be fine without me for 2 days, right? Don't just eat chili the whole time." "I'll manage," he said, his voice flat. He had to get out. He made an excuse about needing to run to the hardware store for lawn fertilizer, a task so mundane it was beyond suspicion. He drove aimlessly through the streets of East Nashville, his knuckles white on the steering wheel of his Honda. The anger was a living thing inside him now, a caged animal clawing at his ribs. He thought about her casual cruelty, the way she dismissed his financial concerns with a wave of her hand, the way she framed her extravagant spending as something she was entitled to. He remembered a conversation from a few months prior. A $5,000 charge had appeared on their joint credit card. When he'd asked about it, she'd been dismissive. "It was a deposit for a girl's trip to Miami with Tasha," she'd said, as if it were nothing. "We decided not to go, so they refunded it." He had been relieved at the time. Now he wondered, was that another lie? Another trip that was never with Tasha? Was Andre in Miami? The possibilities were endless and nauseating. Her entire life outside their home could be a fabrication. He was married to a woman he didn't know at all. He returned home to find her on the phone, her voice low and happy. When she saw him, she ended the call quickly. "That was just Tasha finalizing our arrival time," she said a little too brightly. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He knew it was him. It was always him. Friday morning arrived, gray and overcast. Rain began to fall, streaking the windows of the bungalow. The weather matched his mood perfectly. Jada was ready to go, dressed in expensive athleisure wear for her drive. Her BMW was waiting in the driveway. She came to him in the kitchen, where he was nursing a cup of black coffee. "Okay, I'm off," she said, pulling him into a hug. "Be good." He endured the embrace. It felt like holding a stranger. "You too," he said. She went to kiss him, but he turned his head slightly at the last second, and her lips landed on his cheek. It was a small, almost imperceptible rejection, but it was all he could allow himself. She frowned for a fraction of a second, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "Everything okay, Cam?" "Just tired," he said. "Didn't sleep well." "Well, I'm going to go sleep for the both of us," she said, her smile returning. "I'll text you when I get there, but then my phone is going off. Tasha's orders." "Drive safe," he said. He watched from the window as she got into her $43,000 car, the engine purring to life. She backed out of the driveway without a backward glance and disappeared down the street. The moment the car was out of sight, Cameron's performance ended. The calm facade shattered, and a wave of pure, unadulterated fury washed over him. He walked to the sink and gripped the edge of the quartz countertop, the same counter she had leaned against while drinking her expensive wine and lying to his face. His knuckles were white. He wanted to roar. He wanted to smash something, to break the beautiful, false things she had filled his house with. But he didn't. Breaking things was her style. Impulsive, emotional, destructive. His style was to build, and sometimes to dismantle with surgical precision. He took a deep, shuddering breath. The rain was coming down harder now, a steady drumming on the roof. The house was silent for the first time in days. It was the silence of a battlefield after the first volley. He had 2 days. 2 days to pack up her life. 2 days to prepare the ambush. The escalating betrayal had reached its peak. Now came the strategic response. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one he was about to unleash. What's the most calculated thing you've ever done when you knew you were being wronged? Share your story of strategic thinking in the comments below. The weekend was a blur of grim, methodical work. The moment Jada's BMW was gone, Cameron transformed his home into a staging ground for its own dissolution. The rain that had started Friday morning continued into the afternoon, a fitting soundtrack for the task at hand. He went to the Home Depot on Gallatin Pike and bought 20 of their best heavy-duty moving boxes for $3.50 each. He bought packing tape, Balkiro Osensind Chakinti, bubble wrap, and a black permanent marker. The total came to $94.78, a small, practical expense in a sea of emotional wreckage. He started in the master bedroom closet. It was a walk-in, a space they had customized for $3,000, and her side was overflowing. He began taking down her clothes, not in anger, but with a strange, detached focus. He was an archivist of his own failed marriage. Here was the $2,400 Burberry trench coat she'd bought after he made partner. He folded it carefully and placed it in a box. Here were the rows of shoes, a pair of $950 Christian Louboutin heels she'd worn once to a charity gala. Multiple pairs of Jimmy Choo sandals, each costing over $500. He wrapped each pair in paper and placed them side by side. He filled 3 entire boxes with just her shoes. On the side of each box, he wrote in neat block letters, "Jada, shoes." He moved to her dresses, the $700 Diane von Furstenberg wrap dress from the Memphis conference photo. He held it for a moment, the silk cool against his fingers. This was the dress she wore when she met Andre. He felt a jolt of pure hatred, so intense it made him dizzy. He folded the dress with sharp, angry creases and laid it in a box. He packed her handbags, the $2,800 Givenchy, a $1,900 Saint Laurent, a dozen others, each one a monument to a lifestyle built on his foundation. He worked for hours, the only sound the squeak of the packing tape and the drumming of the rain. He was not just packing her things, he was erasing her from the house. He stripped the sheets from their bed, the ones she had picked out, a $400 set from Brooklyn. He threw them in a trash bag. He went into the bathroom and gathered up her legion of cosmetics and skincare products, a collection that easily represented over $2,000 worth of serums, creams, and makeup. He swept them all into another box, the glass bottles clinking together. He didn't care if they broke. By Saturday morning, the rain had stopped, but the sky was a blanket of gray. Cameron had packed up everything that was exclusively hers. The living room was now filled with a neat stack of 20 boxes, a silent testament to a life being bisected. The house felt larger, emptier. His own sparse belongings seemed to reclaim the space. The wedding photo was gone from the mantelpiece, replaced by a simple landscape painting he'd owned for years. His phone had been mostly silent. Jada had sent one text on Friday afternoon, as promised. Jada, made it to the spa. It's gorgeous. Phone is going off now. Love you. He hadn't replied. He'd simply taken a screenshot and forwarded it to Marcus Thorne with the note, Exhibit A. On Saturday afternoon, he sat at his dining room table with a mountain of paperwork. Following Marcus's instructions, he had gathered every financial document from the past 3 years. He had the deed to the house, his brokerage valuation statements, their joint tax returns, and statements for every bank account and credit card. He created a master spreadsheet, a cold, hard ledger of their financial life. Asset, East Nashville bungalow. Value, $650,000. Owner, Cameron Davis, premarital. Asset, brokerage equity. Value, $410,000. Owner, Cameron Davis, marital. Asset, joint savings. Balance, $78,431.12. Asset, 2022 BMW 3 Series. Value, $38,000. Loan balance, $31,200. Liability, joint credit card. Balance, $8,754.29. He worked for hours, fueled by black coffee and a grim sense of purpose. He was no longer a grieving husband. He was a strategist. And this was his war room. Every number, every statement was a weapon. He was building a fortress of facts, and Jada was about to walk into it completely unarmed. That evening, he did something he hadn't done in years. He called his Auntie Carol, his mother's older sister, a woman whose wisdom was as deep and steady as the Mississippi River. "Cam, baby, is that you?" she answered, her voice warm and familiar. "Hey, Auntie," he said, his own voice cracking slightly. It was the first time he had allowed any vulnerability to show. "What's wrong? I can hear it in your voice." And for the first time, he said it all out loud. He told her about the email, about Andre, about Memphis, about the lies. He told her about the lawyer and the boxes in his living room. He talked for 20 minutes without interruption, and she just listened. When he was finished, there was a long silence on the line. Then she said, "Mama Rose, bless her heart, always said you can't build a strong house on a weak foundation. Sounds to me like your foundation was sand, baby, and the tide just came in." Tears pricked Cameron's eyes. "I feel like such a fool, Auntie." "No," she said firmly. "You are not a fool. You are a good man who trusted. The fool is the one who throws away a diamond thinking it's a rock. You did your part. You built. She didn't. Now, you have to be strong. You do what that lawyer says and you don't look back. You hear me? Your peace is more valuable than any house or car." Her words settled him. They were the anchor he needed in the storm. He ended the call feeling stronger. His resolve hardened. His Auntie Carol was right. His peace was the ultimate asset, and he was about to reclaim it. He had one more day of silence, one more day of playing dumb. And then, the strike. Sunday arrived, bright and painfully clear. The storm had passed, leaving behind a sky of brilliant, cloudless blue. It felt like a mockery. At 5 p.m., Cameron stood in his living room, a space that was now both familiar and chillingly foreign. The 20 boxes containing Jada's life were stacked neatly against one wall, a monolithic tombstone for their marriage. The rest of the house was immaculate, sterile. He had cleaned for hours, scrubbing away any lingering trace of her. He was dressed in the same dark gray suit he had worn to Marcus Thorne's office. It felt like a uniform. He checked his watch, the simple $89 Timex, 5:45 p.m. Right on time, a sleek black Mercedes S-Class, a car worth at least $110,000, pulled into his driveway. Marcus Thorne emerged carrying his $3,000 leather briefcase. He looked as calm and formidable as ever. "Cameron," he said with a nod as he entered the house. He glanced at the stack of boxes. "Efficient, I appreciate that." At 5:50 p.m., a second car arrived. It was a modest Lexus sedan driven by Sarah Jenkins. Sarah was a top residential realtor and an old friend of Cameron's from his early days in the business. She was a kind, no-nonsense woman in her 40s, with warm eyes that were currently filled with sympathy. She held a sleek portfolio under her arm. "Cam," she said softly, giving his arm a squeeze. "I'm so sorry." "Thank you for doing this, Sarah," he said. "Of course," she replied, her voice firming up. "Let's get this done." The three of them took their places in the living room. Marcus sat in an armchair, placing his briefcase on the floor beside him. Sarah stood near the window, holding her portfolio. Cameron remained standing, his back to the empty fireplace, his hands clasped behind him. The stage was set. They were three figures in a quiet, devastating tableau, waiting for the final actor to make her entrance. The minutes ticked by. 6 p.m., 6:01 p.m. The silence in the room was absolute, heavy with anticipation. Cameron's heart was a slow, heavy drum against his ribs. He wasn't nervous. He was ready. He felt a profound sense of clarity, the calm that comes when a difficult decision has been made and the path forward is clear, no matter how painful. At 6:02 p.m. he heard it. The purr of the BMW's engine, the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. He saw the white car pull in, gleaming in the late afternoon sun. Sunlight glinted off the windshield, obscuring the driver. A car door opened and closed. He heard the click of heels on the stone walkway, the sound of a key in the lock. The front door swung open, and Jada walked in. She was glowing. She was tan, her skin luminous against a white sundress. Her braids were pulled up in a chic, elegant style. She was smiling, a wide, relaxed smile of someone returning from a wonderful vacation. She was holding a small, tacky-looking souvenir bag that read Blues on Beale Street. A fatal mistake. There is no Beale Street at the Omni Spa in Nashville. Her smile froze the instant she saw the scene in the living room. Her eyes darted from Cameron's stony face to the imposing figure of Marcus Thorne, to the unfamiliar woman by the window. Her gaze then fell on the mountain of boxes. The color drained from her face. "Cam?" she said, her voice a thin, confused whisper. "What's going on? Who are these people?" Cameron didn't speak. He simply gestured with one hand toward the polished oak coffee table in the center of the room. She followed his gesture. Her eyes widened. On the gleaming surface of the table, he had placed 3 items in a neat, deliberate row. Her house key, the the key fob for her BMW, and a single, thick, cream-colored envelope bearing the embossed logo of Thorne and Associates, attorneys at law. She looked from the keys to the envelope, then back to Cameron's face, her own a mask of dawning horror. The Beale Street souvenir bag slipped from her fingers and fell to the floor with a soft thud. "What is this?" she breathed, taking a hesitant step into the room. "Cam, you're scaring me." It was Marcus who spoke, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Good evening, Mrs. Davis. My name is Marcus Thorne. I am Mr. Davis's legal counsel." Jada stared at him, uncomprehending. "Legal counsel? For what?" "Your husband is filing for divorce," Marcus stated, his tone devoid of any emotion, "on the grounds of adultery." The word hung in the air, electric and vile. Jada flinched as if struck. She whipped her head back to Cameron. "Adultery? What are you talking about? I was at a spa with Tasha." Cameron finally spoke. His voice was quiet, calm, and utterly devastating. He didn't raise it. He didn't need to. He simply held up his phone and showed her the screen. It was the email. The one she had sent him by mistake. The one with the words, "He totally bought it. Memphis, here we come." Jada's eyes locked on the screen. A small, strangled sound escaped her throat. She looked from the phone to Cameron's unyielding face, and in that moment, she knew. She knew that he knew everything. The carefully constructed world of her lies crumbled to dust in a single, silent second. The petition was filed this morning, along with a motion for a temporary restraining order freezing all marital assets, Marcus continued relentlessly. "That includes your joint bank accounts and all credit cards. This property," he gestured around the pristine room, "is Mr. Davis's sole and separate premarital asset. You are required to vacate the premises immediately." "Vacate," she whispered, her voice trembling. No, you can't. This is my home." "It was never your home," Cameron said, his voice still quiet, but now laced with ice. "It was my house. You were just living in it." Sarah Jenkins, the realtor, stepped forward, her expression professional but tinged with pity. "Mrs. Davis," she said gently, holding out a business card. "My name is Sarah Jenkins. I understand this is a difficult time. If you need assistance in finding a short-term rental, this is the number for a very good leasing agent." The offer of the business card, the practical, dismissive gesture, was what finally broke her. The shock gave way to a wave of desperate, frantic pleading. "Cam, please," she begged, her eyes filling with tears. "We can talk about this. Whatever you think you know, it's not. We can fix this. Please don't do this." Cameron just looked at her, his face a granite mask of resolve. He thought of the lies, the disrespect, the cologne bought for another man with his money. He thought of her parting words. He gave her one last callback, a final, quiet twist of the knife. "I thought you were unplugging," he said. The words, her own flippant lie thrown back at her, hit her harder than any shout could have. Her face crumpled. The fight went out of her, replaced by a raw, naked panic. She looked at the boxes, at the lawyer, at the realtor, and at the cold stranger her husband had become. She had walked in from one life and in the space of 5 minutes had been exiled to another one entirely. And it was a life where she had nothing. The aftermath was a cascade of consequences, each one a direct result of the life Jada had chosen to lead. After Cameron's final, chilling line, she completely fell apart. The pleading turned into hysterics, then into anger. "You can't just throw me out," she shrieked, the carefully constructed facade of her sophistication shattering into a million pieces. "I have rights. Half of everything in this house is mine." "Your belongings are in those boxes, Jada," Cameron said, his voice remaining level. You can arrange for a moving service to pick them up. You are not welcome in this house again." Marcus stood up, his presence commanding the room. "Mrs. Davis, I would advise you to leave peacefully. If you refuse, we will have no choice but to call the Nashville Police Department to have you escorted from the property. They have already been notified of this court-ordered eviction." The threat of police involvement, of public humiliation, finally registered. Jada stared at him, her chest heaving. She looked at Cameron one last time, her eyes searching for any flicker of the man she married, the man who had adored her. She found nothing. She saw only a judge, grim and resolute. Defeated, she grabbed her purse, leaving the tacky Beale Street souvenir bag on the floor. She turned and fled, slamming the door behind her. Cameron watched her go, feeling not triumph, but a profound and hollow emptiness. The strike was over. Now came the fallout. The first frantic voicemail arrived at 6:47 p.m., just as Marcus and Sarah were leaving. Cameron let it go to the recorder. Voicemail 1, angry. "Cameron, you pick up this phone right now. You think you can do this? You think you can just throw me out with nothing? I'm calling a lawyer. You will regret this. This is insane." An hour later, the second one came. The anger was gone, replaced by panicked disbelief. She had likely just tried to use a credit card. Voicemail 2, panicked. "Cam, my card was declined. At a hotel. They declined the Amex. What did you do? The joint account card isn't working either. Where am I supposed to go? I have no money. Tasha isn't answering her phone. Please, call me back. This isn't funny." Tasha, he knew, had been notified by a mutual friend who Cameron had briefed earlier in the day. Tasha, the co-conspirator, had abandoned her friend the moment the scheme collapsed. There was no honor among thieves. The third voicemail, which arrived close to midnight, was drenched in tears and pleading. Voicemail 3, pleading. Sound of sobbing. "Cameron, please, I'm so sorry I messed up. I know I messed up so badly. I'm at a horrible little motel off the highway. I had to use the last $80 in cash I had. Please, just talk to me. I love you. I swear, I love you. It was a mistake. Andre meant nothing. Please, baby, don't throw us away." He listened to the message, his face impassive. The words, "I love you," felt like the grossest lie of all. He deleted the message without a second thought. On Monday morning, the consequences began to solidify into legal and financial fact. Marcus's office served Jada with the official divorce papers at the motel where she was staying. The process server noted she was visibly distraught. The enumeration of her losses was swift and brutal. First, her housing. She was legally barred from the $650,000 bungalow. With no access to funds, she couldn't secure a proper apartment. She ended up moving into Tasha's spare room, a humiliating downgrade from the life she had known. Second, her finances. The $78,400 in their joint savings and the $12,000 in their joint checking were frozen. Marcus had already filed a motion arguing that due to her dissipation of marital assets, Cameron should be awarded 70% of the funds. Her personal credit cards, which had low limits and high balances, were nearly maxed out. Her primary source of financial lifeblood was gone. Third, her transportation. The white BMW 3 Series was a marital asset. Marcus informed her lawyer that Cameron intended to sell the car to pay off the loan and would not be making any further payments. Within 2 weeks, she had to surrender the car. She was suddenly reliant on Uber and the Nashville bus system, a stark contrast to the luxury vehicle she had seen as a status symbol. Fourth, her social standing. Cameron was quiet but deliberate. He didn't smear Jada, but the facts of the divorce filing, adultery, and dissipation of marital assets leaked through the legal process. The circle of affluent professional friends they had cultivated quickly sided with Cameron. His quiet dignity stood in stark contrast to her frantic, messy downfall. Invitations to dinners and events stopped coming for her. She was ostracized, a social pariah. Her identity, which was so deeply tied to being Cameron Davis's successful, beautiful wife, was erased. Fifth, her career. The stress of her situation began to affect her work. She was distracted, emotional, and her performance plummeted. The marketing manager job, which she had once presented as a glamorous, high-powered career, was revealed to be less secure than she let on. 3 months after the separation, she was let go. Cameron watched all of this from a distance, communicating only through Marcus. He did not feel joy at her suffering. Instead, he felt a grim vindication. This wasn't revenge, it was an audit. Her life had been built on a fraudulent foundation, and it was simply collapsing under the weight of its own lies. He had not destroyed her. He had simply stepped aside and allowed the consequences of her own actions to run their course. The cascade was complete. Her world had been washed away, and all that was left was the truth. 1 year later, the Nashville sun felt different. It felt warmer, cleaner. Cameron was walking through the wide green expanse of Centennial Park, the afternoon light making his deep brown skin glow. He wore a simple gray t-shirt and jeans, his locks tied back. He looked lighter, the tension that had settled deep in his shoulders for years finally gone. Beside him walked a young man named David, a 22-year-old recent graduate from Tennessee State University. David's eyes were bright with ambition, his questions about commercial real estate sharp and insightful. He was the first recipient of the Davis Forward Foundation Scholarship, a program Cameron had established a few months after the divorce was finalized. The divorce had settled, much as Marcus Thorne had predicted. The court had awarded Jada only 10% of the appreciated value of the bungalow, a sum of just over $4,000, acknowledging Cameron's premarital ownership and her minimal contribution. Due to the evidence of adultery and the dissipation of marital assets, the judge had divided the brokerage equity 75 to 25 in Cameron's favor. Jada had walked away with a little over $100,000 from the equity and about $25,000 from the joint accounts. It was a substantial amount of money, but for someone with her tastes and lack of financial discipline, it wouldn't last long. Cameron had sold the bungalow. The memories were too toxic. He'd made a significant profit and used it to buy a sleek, modern 2-bedroom condo in the Gulch for $850,000. It had floor-to-ceiling windows, with a panoramic view of the city he was helping to build. It was his space, filled with his things, books, art by local black artists, and a simple, comfortable sofa. There were no ghosts there. He poured his energy into his work and into his new foundation. He'd used $50,000 of his own money to seed the scholarship, which provided tuition assistance and mentorship for young, aspiring black real estate professionals in Nashville. It gave him a sense of purpose beyond just closing deals. He was building something again, but this time it was for his community. So the key to a good cap rate is really about projecting future income, not just looking at the current leases, Cameron explained to David, pointing toward a new development rising in the distance. That makes sense, David said, furiously taking notes on his phone. It's about seeing the potential, not just the reality. Cameron smiled. Exactly, you got it. He rarely thought of Jada anymore. He had heard through the grapevine that she had burned through her settlement money in less than 6 months. She was living in a cramped, run-down apartment in Antioch, working a retail job at the mall. Tasha had eventually kicked her out. Andre, the brand guru from Memphis, had disappeared from her life the moment her access to Cameron's money was cut off. There was a rumor she'd tried to apologize to Cameron a few months ago, sending a long, rambling email to his old address. He had a filter set up. It went directly to trash, unread. He had forgiven her, not for her sake, but for his. Forgiveness was the final act of closing the account. He owed her nothing, not even his anger. As they walked past the Parthenon, Cameron felt a sense of profound peace. He had learned the hardest lesson of his life, that a person's character is their only true asset. Jada's life had been a glittering, expensive facade with nothing behind it. He had once believed that true wealth was a combination of a high salary, a valuable home, and a beautiful partner. He now knew that was wrong. True wealth is integrity. It's the peace you feel when you look at yourself in the mirror. It's building something that will outlast you. It's the warmth of the sun on your face during a quiet walk in the park, knowing you are exactly where you are supposed to be, whole and free. We all build our lives on a foundation of some kind. What do you think is the most important cornerstone for a happy life? Is it love, integrity, financial security, or something else entirely? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. Let's continue to build a community that values what truly matters.